Okay, now I'm going to talk about trans people in martial arts, because I think it's really important for you to understand that trans people exist in martial arts. Okay, in the last couple of years I have seen 2 martial arts students come out as trans. There's one who's a mutual on Twitter. They're both in Australia, actually, thinking about it. This one is Australia, lives in Australia. I don't know what martial arts she practices, but she's often talked about it. And she used to have like error gender not found in her bio. A few weeks ago she came out as trans. A year or 2 ago, a CLF student came out as gender fluid, non-binary trans. These people do exist in martial arts. They do martial arts. They like martial arts. You need to get a grip on that, I think. I think it's very easy with the public discourse to go along with the idea, with these rather prejudicial ideas about trans people, trans women in particular, doing martial arts. Now, I have made a long and detailed video about that. I'm not going to go into that here. I suggest you watch that and maybe try and learn something, because I'm afraid, if you're sort of one of those people that goes on about high school biology, you're not getting it, okay? This is beyond high school biology. Lots of things beyond high school, lots of things you deal with are beyond high school. You don't reject them because they're all stuff that you didn't just understand in high school, okay? Cars are, how cars work is beyond high school, alright? You don't say, oh, cars aren't real, I don't believe in cars, because you don't know how they work, because it's not something you learned in high school, okay? Now, I'm saying this because you don't know who is trans, right? Now, statistically, 1 to 2% of people are trans. That means that if you've got a school that's got about 100 people, which is not unusual in a martial arts school, okay, maybe even more. Some have 200 or 300 people that go through their school every week, right? Chances are, if you've got a school that's got 100 people, you've got 1 or 2 students who are trans. You might not even know. If you've got an organisation that's got, say, 100 male SIFUs, chances are 2 of those will be trans. And you won't know. And the reason I'm saying is that there are a lot of people who will casually post memes about, trans women in sports, and like trying to make out that trans women only do sports because they're rubbish they can't compete with men. It's very belittling, by the way, for women. Just want to point that out. And deliberately so, I have no doubt. You don't think much of women as martial artists, I know this. I've had plenty of experience of dealing with you all, okay? The fact is, it's very belittling to women when you talk about it that way. And also, when you post stuff like this, when you casually say stuff, no, I am not a cis, stop calling me cis, or stuff like that, I'm just a person. Cis is not a slur, okay? It's a proper Latin term that just happens to be used in the context of distinguishing trans people from other people, alright? From people who are not trans. That's all it is. It's a word that it's a prefix that's used in other places too, and it's a scientific term, okay? When you say stuff like this, when you casually talk about men pretending to women, if you casually joke about men wanting to pretend to be women, to just go into bathrooms and be predators on women, and completely ignoring the fact that men have never ever needed to pretend to be women in order to abuse women, certainly not in martial arts. I think there are many, there's an awful lot of male martial arts teachers, cisgender male martial arts teachers, who've abused women completely got away with it, never pretended to be women themselves, okay? It's not a thing, alright? Get over that shit. When you say stuff like that, there are going to be people, trans people, in martial arts right now, possibly even at quite a high level, who are looking at that and thinking they won't like it if they know who I really am. They won't like me if they know who I really am. There might be some popular Sifu out there who's kind of looking at those kind of jokes and thinking, this is what you think of me, this is what you think I am. And you might actually admire them, you might actually think quite a lot of them, they might be quite popular. And before you say, yeah, well, you know, trans women, they're just rubbish men, aren't they? They're not going to get very far in martial arts. Well, actually, no, that's not how it works necessarily, right? Quite often, trans women in particular, and I think this will go for trans men to the other way around, but trans women, they'll try and kind of compensate for the fact that they feel like they're women or they feel too feminine by expressing themselves in a very hyper-masculine way. So, like, for example, Abigail Thorne, who is a YouTuber, she came out as a trans woman in January 2021. Now, I actually watched her for years before that. She was presenting as male, and she presented in a very hyper-masculine way. You know, she used to talk about going to the gym, have big old biceps, and there was a video of her that she made that I know she doesn't like now, and this might be why, where she's topless and she looks hot, she looks fit, she looks very masculine. A lot of and now she looks really feminine. You wouldn't think that she was that masculine to look at her now. She looks very pretty. I mean, she looks hot in a feminine way, but she looks so feminine you wouldn't realise, you wouldn't have thought, okay? So look at her before. And the same is going to go for trans women in martial arts, alright? They are likely to be the most hyper-masculine men that you see. It's quite possible that they would be, okay? And that's not to say that they're not into it, you know. People who get in, you know, trans people will quite often get into something, you know, trans women will get into something that seems kind of masculine because it's actually something they quite enjoy, but also it's a way of pretending to be men. It's a way of like saying, yes, I am a man, honest, gov. Yeah, they do that with computers and with gaming as well, but they'll still be quite into it. You know, women are quite into martial arts. I'm quite into martial arts. I'm a cis woman. I'm very into martial arts. It is a thing that women can be into, right? And it will be something that there will be trans women who have got really into it, not realising they're trans, and but they'll still be really into it even when they do know they're trans. And you've got to remember, you know, that man, your favourite male student who works really hard, has really progressed really well, looks fabulous, has got really great over the years, okay? They might be working at it so hard because they feel like they need to prove themselves as men because they are actually women and they actually feel like women. They'd actually rather be wearing something feminine and looking feminine, you know, using a girl's name. That might be the case. And you know, your favourite female student might actually be a trans man who's just like really into it because it's a masculine coded thing that they can do without, you know, well, I mean, women who do martial arts do get flack, don't get me wrong, but you know, it's something that they will do because they'll feel like they can, because it's a masculine thing and they want to be able to do something masculine. You really have to remember this, okay? You know, if you've got an organisation that's got thousands of people across the world, there are going to be trans people in them. You need to get this. They could be your favourite student. They could be your best mate in your local gym, okay? So when you casually make jokes about trans women being rubbish men or being being predatory, you're not helping them. You really need to get a grip on this, okay? Because trans people do actually have a lot to offer. You may not see it, you may not want to see it either. I'm sure you don't, a lot of you. But they actually do, you know? Like, I mean, one of the things about trans people is the reason they tend to be into computers, for example, is this code switching, right? I mean, they get into gaming because they can role play, they can be someone they don't normally feel like they have to express themselves as in real life. Sometimes it's going to be like they're going to be playing with female characters. They won't necessarily, but there's a lot of code switching. There's a lot of as a trans person, right? So there'll be there's a very a way. It means that they could be bringing things in that you won't have thought of before. They'll see things in a different way that will be interesting and different and bring new life into martial arts. And we're losing out by not making a space for them, by pretending that trans women are just rubbish men. And I'd really like you to think carefully about the things that you say, because you could actually be upsetting someone you really like, that you really admire, and making them scared to come out. And maybe you want to, okay? But I'd really like you to consider the fact that you shouldn't. You should be careful about this and think about these things properly, and not just think about things in a prejudicial way because it suits you or because it's easy, okay? Because trans people exist, they exist in martial arts, and they actually have a great deal to offer. Trans men too, okay? Trans men will be there. And trans men, when they transition, they take a lot of testosterone. They can actually end up being stronger and more powerful than your average cis man because they are taking so much testosterone, really. You know, trans people are facing a huge amount of problems. I would like to think that there are other people in martial arts who are going to accept them, and I know there are some, right? And the reason I make such a point of being very vocal about my support for trans people is that I want them to know that if they come out, if they want to be able to come out, I will defend them, and I will defend their right to exist as martial artists. And I'm not just going to be supportive of them. And I think I'd love to go into the whole politics of how we've got this is trans genocide, because it is a genocide. I'm sorry, you may think that you're not doing anything harmful, but sort of not allowing people to express themselves as they really are is actually quite bad for people. It might make you feel more comfortable, but kind of need to get with the times, really. And a lot of it is about kind of reinforcing the differences between men and women. I know that a lot of you just think women should be in their place, and trans women are a challenge to that, and the possibility that women can win against trans women is a challenge to that as well. I get that, and I'd really like you to kind of rethink this. Think about martial arts in the long term. You're actually holding back the progress of martial arts by participating in the kind of rhetoric, the kind of attitudes, promulgating those attitudes that make trans people feel uncomfortable in martial arts, okay? Really like you to think more carefully, because you don't know who is trans. There are trans people in martial arts. I don't know who they all are, okay? I'm not going to know. Neither are you.